Hello everybody and welcome back to Paleo Springs State Park. In this episode today we are building a brand new Elasmotherium habitat and a joined habitat here with the Coelodonta. So we haven't had Coelodonta or the woolly rhino here in the park before, but we're building a dual enclosure for both of them. Now this again comes at a time when is similar to the last episode with the Megaloceros, that many of you believed that the habitat was too small for those Megaloceros and too small for the Elasmotherium. And honestly, after seeing both of those species in this larger habitat that we're building here, I could not agree more. I genuinely think that these look really, really great. But what I'm doing here is I'm building a dual backstage area here. And so one of the things that we're doing is I'm taking some inspiration here from Animal Kingdom, actually, at Disney, where they have dual backstage habitats here, not habitats, backstage holding areas for the hooved animals here. And they have more than just dual habitat or holding areas for them. They have, numerous different species there on the savannas in Animal Kingdom, but this isn't a one-to-one reference. I didn't have any, video or photo reference for these. I was just kind of going by feel and by eye and just kind of what felt right and looked right. And, it gets the job done. I definitely think that there's some better habitats out there, or not, I keep saying habitats, some better backstage enclosures that I've made here personally, but that I've also seen in real life and other people build for this game and for Planet Zoo as well. But, again, it gets the job done and it functions, and that's really what I was going for here, is a functional habitat. And yeah, so it does its job. But we're doing here a trick that I have done before for, I forget which episode now, but we're using these big steel beams as a separation barrier here. So a lot of times in zoos you'll see these big steel beams being used in the rhino or elephant habitats or enclosures. Again, I keep saying habitat, I don't know why, but in the backstage areas of those for those animals there, for like elephants, rhinos, things like that, because they're really big and really heavy duty, and you can kind of hide behind them, I guess, but also have the animals close enough where you can have a vet on one side and a keeper on the other, and maybe you can take a blood sample or something like that if you need to. So yeah, we're kind of following in suit here with those, and I think this turns out pretty well here. I'm grabbing one of those Elasmotheriums here and plopping it into this habitat here. And I will say this habitat now because now we're looking at the traversable area of this animal to try to see if they can actually fit in these holding pens. For those of you that don't know, that don't have the game, the Elasmotherium has a really weird hitbox. I don't know if they adjusted it in the last update, but it definitely feels a little better than it did when I made that original Elasmotherium habitat there. It feels like they kind of shrunk the hitbox there. Before, it was just absolutely massive, and anything that I would build that would be even 8 meters apart, it was just too narrow for these big giant beasts to get through. But now, you can see there just briefly that the traversable area it can fit anywhere in this backstage area here, and that's perfect because that means that the Coelodonta can easily fit in those areas as well. I would say Coelodonta is probably about 1 to 2 times smaller than the Elasmotherium. It's really, really small by comparison, but these are both Pleistocene mammals. These are both Pleistocene rhinoceros, and technically speaking, the Elasmotherium and Coelodonta are not directly related. They are very, 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 very distantly related. Coelodonta is actually more closely related today to the Sumatran rhino that is still alive, I believe critically endangered, but it is still alive. Whereas Elasmotherium diverged off, many years ago. I don't know the exact time. I'll try to find it and throw it up on screen if I can, but they differed a really long time ago. And I remember when I was doing research for this video here, I saw a cladogram, which for those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically the tree of life, I guess you could say, that shows the relations between different species. Yes, it is flawed, it is not perfect, it is constantly always changing as we learn more about these different species. Not just these species, but species even today have cladograms. And you can see in the one for the Elasmotherium, or I'm sorry, for the Coelodonta, that it's very closely related to the Sumatran rhino, but it's more distantly related to the black rhino and white rhino. And that's important to me, at least, because I've mentioned in these videos about the Elasmotherium and Coelodonta before, and just kind of making the comparison with their lips and the types of environments that they would have lived in. Now, we're making a large enough habitat here where we can house both of them comfortably, and we can have both of their niche environments present. So what I mean by that is, if you ever look at a rhino's lips, and I don't know when you would ever get a chance to, but if you look at a rhino's lips, the black and white rhinos, as the example, are sort of the two key ones that I'm talking about here. So a black rhino has a sort of an opposable lip, an opposable upper lip, and that, I believe, is the actual term for it, where they can use their lip almost like a finger, and they can grab things, or they can browse is what it's called. And so that indicates to biologists, people who study these animals, that they live in a habitat that is very bushy and scrubby and has a lot of twigs and branches that they can grab that opposable lip around and grab and pull them. In the game, Elasmotherium has something like that. Coelodonta, however, has a lip that is similar, more similar to the white rhinoceros. And again, this is all hypothetical. We don't actually know what these animals looked like, though I do believe that the Coelodonta, we may actually know what they look like if they've found ones preserved in permafrost, which would be really, really cool if they did. I'll try to look that up, and if I find anything on it, you'll see it in the description below that I dropped a link down there if I did find something. If I didn't, then it won't be there. But yeah, if so again, we don't know what they sort of looked like, so this is all speculation here. But in the game, Coelodonta has a lip that's similar to a white rhinoceros, which, if you ever look at one, is very flat and broad, and that means that animal lives in a habitat where there's a lot of grasses around. There's a lot of really low-lying grasses and vegetation that they can, pick out and sort of mow with their lips there. They wouldn't be grabbing leaves from branches or trees. They might every now and then. And again, the black rhino might in desperate times eat grasses and things that are low down to the ground. But again, their key environments where they live in means that they would, fall into these different niches. So they wouldn't necessarily be eating the same plants. They wouldn't necessarily be eating the same animals. And I think that that's super, super fascinating. And to me, is always really fun to look at and try to figure out in the game, at least, where these animals lived, where they might have, what niches they might have filled, and what might have been their benefit to the ecosystem. You know, one species that they don't have in here, but I'm really excited for because I have a personal connection, and I do know that they are going to add this animal at some point, and that is the giant ground sloth. So for those of you that don't know, that are new to the channel here, I actually used to work for a museum in Daytona Beach, Florida, that had a giant ground sloth skeleton, and for that specific species, Elasmotherium lardi, it was the most complete skeleton found anywhere in the world of that species. So, you know, it's not as big as Megatherium in South America was, and it's not as famous, I guess, as probably Megatherium as well, but Elasmotherium, specifically the subspecies lardi, was found here in Central Florida, where I live now. And again, that museum in Daytona Beach has the world's most complete specimen of one. So pretty cool. But that's an animal that is really, really fun to talk about because, you know, it sort of begs the question of what niche did they fall into? There's a bit of misinformation that goes around, and I think it's kind of dying out now, but even Hank Green on SciShow made a video about this years and years ago, where he spread that misinformation unknowingly, but then made a follow-up video and corrected it. And so what that misinformation is that giant ground sloths, because they're so big, they must be the reason why avocados exist, why avocados have those giant seeds. What else would have eaten those plants other than Pleistocene megafauna? And, you know, it's a seemingly plausible thing and completely not out of the realm of possibility. But unfortunately, that is not the case. That's not what happened with the avocado. The reason why its seed is so big is because of humans. And, you know, it had a giant seed before humans, but we sort of bred it to have, or yeah, we bred it, I guess that's the right word. We selectively bred the avocados to have more flesh, more fruit, and less seed. So it is actually smaller, I think, than what might have existed in the wild back in ye olden times, I guess you could say. But yeah, the giant ground sloth's a really interesting one of just sort of what niche did it fill, because genuinely, I don't know that I could tell you. I don't know what niche the giant ground sloth filled. I know in places like Arizona and Nevada, they found caves that Megatherium, I believe, dug with its hands, and it's kind of weird to imagine a sloth digging underground like that. But you got to remember too that the giant ground sloth is a relative of the Glyptodont, which is a relative of the armadillo. And in fact, the giant ground sloth and the Glyptodont are actually more closely related than modern day sloths and armadillos, but they are still very, very closely related there. But yeah, again, we don't have those animals in the game, and I would love to have them in the future because it spurs on these really interesting conversations here. So we're jumping into the landscaping and detailing here, and I'm just clearing up this area here, adding in some terrain brushing here. And we're going to be adding in here along the front where this boardwalk is, which I completely skipped over and didn't talk about the boardwalk here. But we're building in a false barrier. So this is a little separation between the guests and the animals there inside the enclosure. Many of you pointed out that I did not build one of these in the Brontosaurus habitat, and you are correct. I am going to go back and build that. I was waiting for this episode though, so that I could kind of get a hang of how to do that exactly. And truthfully, I don't know if this is the way to do it or not. With all these sticks and logs there, I thought that this would have been enough, but you can see the traversable area there. They can completely just walk straight through all of this, and that's not ideal. So I do end up putting a little bit of fence here, but I think that the sticks and logs there do kind of hide it. I might go back through after this video off camera and put in some foliage there and try to hide some of that, make it look more brambly and bushy, like you know, an area where maybe keepers can't get to or landscapers can't really get to or don't want to get to, you know, to try to discourage the animals from getting too close to those sorts of environments there. Adding in some rocks here into the enclosure. You always got to add in rocks. Rocks are great, and rocks just add so much texture and life to a build, even if it's a open grassland like this is seemingly trying to be. You know, grass and rocks just kind of, they add so much to a build, and these especially larger boulders here definitely add something to it as well. Adding in some terrain paint here to sort of make these goat trails, or you know, as they're called sometimes in city planning, desire paths. These are the animals' tracks, almost the places where they would walk the most. If I was being super nitpicky about it, I would probably go back and eliminate some of the grasses that are growing in those areas and maybe put more grasses on the sides of those terrain paints. But you know, you live and learn, and I don't really care. It's kind of more in depth than that. I thought this habitat needed something else here, and so I'm adding in this little stream in here. And I guess my canon for this stream is that it's pulling the water from the spring itself and sort of pumping it into this enclosure and then pumping it back out into the spring or something like that. Would this be necessarily healthy for the spring environment? I don't know. Genuinely, I don't know. You know, we have keepers that are keeping this area clean and sanitary for the animals that live there. I like to think that this water system here, this wetland system here, we're not adding in nutrients to fertilize the grasses or anything. I mean, obviously you can see the grasses are dead. It's that dead boreal grass here. So we're not adding in nutrients or, you know, fertilizers or anything. So I don't see why the water would be contaminated, but maybe it would. If there's anybody out there that knows better than I do about wetland reconstruction, definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But we are almost out of time here for the speed build, so I'm gonna leave it off here, and I will see you all back in the live play in just a couple of minutes, or you can skip ahead to the timestamp down below. All right, so we're back here in the live play now, and I gotta say, I am really happy with how this turned out. Honestly, this turned out better than I thought it was going to. I didn't really have a clear direction or a clear plan with this habitat, but I think that, you know, it does justice to the ancient Pleistocene. You can see the Elasmotherium running there, but we got to introduce you all to our new baby animals. So first off, we have Dasha here, our little female Coelodonta baby, and then her mom, adopted mom, Svetlana here, and then we have one more who is somewhere, maybe if I click on Svetlana, go to family, Dasha, interesting. So where is he? Oh, there he is. Ludmilla right here, another female little baby Coelodonta. That's weird to me that Svetlana is not taking care of her. Why is that? Is that because her clutch Ah, interesting. Okay, so I might need another adult Coelodonta, or we can just leave little baby Ludmilla to venture out in the wilds here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Should we add another one? Should we add a mom for Ludmilla here, or should we leave her be? So yeah, I mean, you can see the Coelodontas here in their little enclosure with a little baby Dasha here following her adopted mom. That's so adorable. And then we have our two Elasmotheriums that we moved over from our other habitat. Here we have Pasha. This is a original guy here in the park, and then his girl Bella over here. Both of these are the longhorn version of the Elasmotherium. And I really like how, you know, this overall turned out here. Obviously, these fences are the high security cable fences to account for these guys, because the Elasmotheriums will absolutely demolish anything and everything. But yeah, I really like how this turned out. To me, this really does look and feel like a scene out of the ancient Pleistocene Europe. Now, in the future, if I didn't mention this already before, and also, by the way, really quick before I get off on this side tangent, for those of you that didn't watch the last video with the Megaloceros, all of these little juveniles here, they are all set to, or rather all new animals that we're releasing into the park are set to the realistic aging system. So that means that these animals will take absolutely eons to grow up, and that is on purpose. You know, I wanted to do that because I want to spend time with these animals. I want to get to know them, and I want you all to get to know them as well. So our little baby Megaloceros over here for our last habitat. You see their little family group here. Why are you unhappy? You're hungry. Okay, that's fine. But anyway, yeah, these are all set to be, you know, growing up at a realistic pace. So it'll actually take in-game years for them to grow up. But anyway, yeah, I think this does a really good job here of showcasing sort of the ancient European Pleistocene environment here with the boreal dry grass and maybe a little river running through here. I really like how this turned out, by the way, with the texture painting. That's probably one of the better river stream creeks that I've made in the game. I really like that. But yeah, so I think in the future, and I know a lot of you are probably going to say that this habitat here is too big for just Elasmotheriums and Coelodontas, and you're right, it is. It is too big for them. You know, their size ratio for the habitats required in game. This is the old Elasmotherium habitat, if you didn't see it, and rightly so. Some people on Reddit and a few people here in the comments of that video called me out and said that these habitats were too small, and said that they really look just like fancy holding pens. Now, this viewing gallery here, we're going to repurpose this. We're going to reuse this, and I have some big plans for this in the future for a different Pleistocene mammal that we have in the game already, and I will let you all try to figure that out without me saying too much here. The sun's going down behind the mountains there, but yeah, you know, this is too big technically now. So we went from too small to too big. The hope with this, though, and I kind of spurred this on with the new Megaloceros habitat over here, my hope is that whenever they add more Pleistocene mammals into the game, my hope is that they add species from these environments. You know, if I didn't mention it already in the speed build portion of this video, at the end of the day, you know, I want this habitat here to emulate Pleistocene North America. I think that's kind of the vibe that we're going for here with Paleo Springs, is that this is supposed to be a reconstruction of some of the, what is that? Is the sun coming back up already? Interesting. But I want these habitats here to be reconstructions of Pleistocene North America, because at the end of the day, Paleo Springs was founded to quote unquote preserve these animals here, the dinosaurs and the other things, the Morrison Formation, the future Hell Creek Formation mini series that we're going to be doing. Those are all icing on the cake. First and foremost, Paleo Springs is dedicated to the mammals of the park, and to do them justice and to give them the habitats that they can thrive the most in is really where I think Paleo Springs thrives, and where it'll really shine through over other parks per se, and specifically another park that we're going to be doing here on the channel, teasing another series that is going to be coming here eventually. I won't tell you the name of it right now, but I hope that in the future they add North American Pleistocene animals, and I would love to see I would love to switch out the Coelodonta and Elasmotherium here and have it be giant ground sloths and glyptodonts and prehistoric camels and things like that. I would love to be able to move these guys into a different portion that can maybe focus on European animals, or Eurasian animals I should say, rather than being the one-to-one recreation. But I think for now it's good enough and it gets the point across. And Pleistocene Eurasia would have looked pretty similar, all things considered, and this is big brush strokes. So you paleobotany fans out there, don't come for me in the comments, or maybe do. It helps the algorithm if you comment, so don't come for me. But the Eurasian continents and North America generally at the end of the Pleistocene period, when the woolly mammoths and mastodons and coelodontas, elasmotheriums, that sort of stuff were around, generally was pretty similar. It was cold, it was temperate, it was boreal in the northern climates, and here in the redwoods portion there would have been more smilodons in the grasses here hiding around, and there would have been more of a scrubby grassland, I would say, but we're kind of getting that vibe here with these boreal dry grasses. This, to me, the dry grasses really do look like a cold, or maybe a environment where these animals would have to have thicker fur, and the plants here, maybe the soil isn't as nutritious for them. But anyway, I am rambling once again. So that is where I'm going to leave off here. If you made it this far in the video, I just want to say thank you. There's a million things you could have been doing today, and you chose to spend a little bit of that time here with me and watch me build this gigantic habitat to the Coelodontas and Elasmotheriums. But without further ado, that is all that I have for you all. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next one. Take care for now.